I did not ever share my experience at all about my 18 years with a bipolar alcoholic mother, with anybody. She died in a tragic car accident. The only way that you can heal is if you feel. You've got to feel the emotions attached to it. So be sad, be angry, be frustrated. We deserve to be here. We deserve to be loved. And there's nothing that we can't overcome.
Thanks for tuning in to the Vibrant Soul Society, The Conversations. I'm your host, Baba Sam, the Miracle Man. We have a very vibrant soul here with us. Carol, welcome to The Conversations.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. And it's been fun getting to know you. I know we're going to have a good conversation.
Yeah, we spoke for a few minutes before we recorded this. We're getting some really good stuff here. We need to record this and get going.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Carol, let's begin this conversation. Who is Carol?
Carol is, I want to say, a young woman. I'm about to be 60 in a couple weeks, but I never have ever felt my age. I am a person that has been born several times. I've experienced many traumas and dedicated a portion of myself and personal passion to what I call trauma rebirth. I've helped myself through many traumas as well as others. I am a OBGYN nurse practitioner, so I've been in the OB space, birthing babies, helping docs and nurses do it safely. I'm passionate about fetuses, babies, and trauma, which doesn't seem like a normal partnership, but there are some similarities.
So, what got you really specifically? Because I know you dealt with your own past experiences with trauma, so you decided to
Yeah.
help others with their trauma. What was that pivot point for you? I know a lot about trauma. How can I help others with this? How did that begin for you?
So it's been an ongoing process. I did not ever share my experience at all about my 18 years with a bipolar alcoholic mother, with anybody. She died in a tragic car accident. My brother and I actually came upon the car crash scene. So that was part of my trauma. We had this sudden funeral, and I was at college within 5 days. So I was forced to go through this huge event very quickly and then pivot and focus on something. So I really never experienced it as I should. And it wasn't till 2.5 years later, I went to her gravesite. The summer I was just home from college and I fell apart. It was like popping a zit and it just all came out, the ugliness. And I got very depressed and anxious. Lots of thoughts and things came up about me. I eventually started talking. I've talked to many of my friends, and when I expose my traumas, they've shared more with me. It's taken a while for me to be comfortable to share more on this bigger stage, but I'm going to share. That took a while because I'm a very personal person. If it was just one on one, I met you somewhere, we might get talking, but I just feel like I'm kind of in that third to fourth last quarter of my life. I'm going for triple digits, but I need to share. I feel a personal push from my own soul to speak. And
Hmm.
so these kind of platforms is where I'm trying to share with others.
So, when you were dealing with your trauma, were you just talking to friends, or did you seek out professional help, counselors, or anything of that nature to help you process?
So I took the weight of my mother's bipolar and alcoholism by myself. My oldest brother moved out when he was 18. So it was really my other brother, John, who was 3 years older than I, that really were in the thick of it with her for those last years. My dad had gotten divorced, so he was out of the home. We received all of that negative verbal abuse and those kinds of things. The problem is a lot with certain traumas, it's shame. And I felt ashamed of her. I felt ashamed that this was my life. I blamed myself for many, many years about it. Maybe I wasn't a good daughter. Maybe I didn't keep my room clean. Whatever, this crazy mother that's blowing up and looking like a 27-foot dinosaur in the room. It was really scary. So there was a lot of fear, shame. And like I said, it wasn't until after there was a couple friends that talked to me. about some of this stuff, but I only shared minuscule amount of what was going on in the house. It was many years later that I finally felt more comfortable speaking with people.
So it was just
You also asked, so what was I doing then? The only other thing that I personally did was I had a journal at night in my bedroom. I was able to journal, and I've had pads of writing out my anger and fear. And I got married. I remember one afternoon, I never shared them with anybody, and I burned them. It was just a lot of ugliness. I didn't want to relive and reread. And I just had lots of earth angels show up in my life that made me comfortable enough to share and speak and finally get stuff out and not take it so personally anymore. That's when the healing really started.
right. So you had just friends to help you release it to get it out there, but you didn't have anything like a meditation practice. Journaling itself is very healing to just get that out there and not reread it, live it.
Right. Well, I did journal. And after I came back from her gravesite, I did have instant, huge emotions that came over me and very, very depressed. I remember calling my dad, like, I might want to come home and all of that. I ended up on antidepressants for about a year. It wasn't until sitting in a driveway with one of my best friends, and I just kept talking about mom and blaming myself. I should have been there and all that. She kept screaming, but I wasn't hearing her. She was screaming, Carol, it's not your fault. But I didn't hear her till literally she hit, we were sitting in the front seat, she punched me in the arm. She goes, stop, listen to me. And like we were talking earlier, hearing from her, an objective person, to say, no, you were not at fault. And from then on, it was me digesting that her issues were her issues, even though I lived in that environment.
There's something interesting. I'm curious about your take on this because you were prescribed antidepressants. Did that
Mhm.
doctor try to help you with your PTSD and your trauma? Did he help with that, or was that sort of ignored?
No, actually, the guy that I kind of doctor shopped, he was the one said, you're going to come to me for the next 3 visits. You got to stay with one person. And I kind of laughed inside, like, oh, he's on to me. And he says, where's your mom buried? And I said, in Richmond. And I was going to college in Southwest Virginia, which was like 4 hours away. And he said, darn. And I looked at him and I said, what? He goes, oh, I would have taken you right to the gravesite and we would have done some on site therapy. He was able to pull some things out. It took a while. He also had some tapes that he gave me for increasing self esteem. I listened to that, helped as well. And I feel comfortable talking more about it now.
Hmm. That's good. So you did have a little bit of help there to process some of that.
Right, right, right.
Before was the show, we were speaking about the other traumas that you experienced.
It's funny. Sometimes when I do a talk, there's a slide of all this different stuff I've experienced, and all these little words keep floating up. It's usually by about the third or fourth one. I'm looking at the audience, and they're like, "Oh, well, she did all the." So I always start off with the 18 years of my bipolar alcoholic mother. Then I had 2 miscarriages during my pregnancies. I finally have my 2 sons now, lovely, healthy. I went through a divorce that was very contentious, which was very difficult. I was a single mother for a while and eventually he got involved. I then had breast cancer where I went through 18 weeks of chemotherapy, losing hair, the whole thing, all of that trauma of that. I had what I was told was the worst cancer, triple negative breast cancer, just meaning they don't know what caused it. The age of which I had that diagnosis was fairly early. That was another issue, which I'm now 13 years clear. Yay. Then I had the loss of my older brother. He took his life via motor vehicle accident, which was very distressing. However, the year prior, him and I were not talking. I was disturbed by things he was doing. My other brother was telling me about it, and I was just like, I can't deal with that. It was overwhelming for me. He had
Mhm.
some drug issues, alcohol issues. And 18 years later, to the exact date, my second brother took his own life by a gunshot. That was the hardest thing, literally, of all these things I've just said, the hardest thing I've ever been through.
Mm.
Him and I were probably the closest because back at childhood, he was kind of my immediate protector. always making sure I was okay. As we grew up, he had his own business. I had my own business. We bonded, had kids, and all those kinds of things. He's been gone since 2018. And also in the interim of that, first time I've ever lost a job was recently. So I'm having a job sabbatical, but I'm also in process of deciding where my path is taking me next. So lots of different stuff. A lot of different stuff going on.
That's not simple. You show that slide and you're like, wow, look at
Yeah.
all this stuff.
Yeah. And that's in 6 decades.
Yeah.
And no, with there a talk I gave one time called Lifelines. And I had at college, I was one of those resident assistants for orientation of that. We went early, and the person that was kind of like our boss asked us all to go take this long piece of white paper and and write out our life. So if we're 21, you're going to go backwards to birth to 21 and highlight things that you felt were important in your life. Above or positive, below were negatives, and just go through it. Mom was the biggest part of that. It was very telling because I just redid it. And I gave a presentation on lifelines and recommending people go do it. I put a decade per piece of paper and I taped them all together. Even I was like, wow, dang, wow. Even in my own head as a healthcare provider, it's a lot. I'm really proud and I choose to stay on the positivity side of life. Not saying I never have negative thoughts or get down about things, but nothing defines me. I have experienced those things. They brought much trauma and negative emotions with them, but I choose not to let that be everything I am.
Yeah. So today you processed all of it. You're looking healthy. You are healthy. You have these clear signs. We see the smile, your radiance. No one
Yeah.
could possibly guess your age.
Yeah.
It's like you've handled all of this. It's a lot of
Yeah.
resilience.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to say that, particularly after John's suicide, I took a leave of absence. I had never done that. Of all the deaths I've had, I'm my own sole survivor of my family. My dad just died of old age. God bless him. Mom died in a car crash, and my other brother, a car accident, my other brother, the gunshot, unfortunately. It was the only time I finally processed a death in real time.
Mm,
And that was a big wake up call. Very helpful, very healing. Not that anniversaries still don't get me, but it doesn't define me.
mhm.
You and I were talking that even having a disease like MS or hypertension or whatever, it's just an abnormality of an organ. You're not a hypertensive patient. If you want to be, you can be. It just means that you have your blood pressure is above the average amount of people in the world. It's a physiologic response. Interesting, as you and I were both saying, the mind body connection is just on the forefront of science, and also brain and gut relationship as well. Huge part of the immunological system was engaged in our gut. If you look at research, the most under researched organ in the world is the brain, which seems crazy, but it is. We don't know, I would say, an inch, 2 inches of the total size of it, of the brain, research wise. That's it. And
Yeah.
I know it's daunting, but it was funny. There's Dr. Ammon. I don't know if you're, familiar with him. He does a lot of brain scans. He was the first one who brought the idea of scanning the brain when considering psychological illness or issues or those kinds of things. And he finally got enough scans where he can say, this is how depressed brains work, or how concussion brains may end up with complications. He got a lot of pushback from his neurology specialty and those things.
Yeah, I think it was a very important point for your healing journey was not allowing that identity to define you, that attach onto that label. Because I always clung to my labels as me. You didn't do that.
Right. Another example of that is I, for a very long time, went to Al Anon meetings, adult children of alcoholic meetings. They're out there. They help me a lot. However, after a couple of years, I remember thinking to myself and watching people that attended, there were people that were still coming in. these meetings 13 years after, 20 years after. And I kept looking at him going, yeah, I'm not doing that. My mom was very difficult. It was very confusing. I took on a lot of that. After my brother committed suicide, I did go to a couple meetings before I actually found this beautifully wonderful local support group right now, which is for suicide survivors. And we just had our first walk, which was on in September to raise some money for awareness. It's awareness in not letting it consume your life. It's a part, it's something you experienced, but don't let it be like this umbrella that has to drive your life. And that's what I want to help people with.
Right. Talk about your book a little bit and how you're helping people through multiple avenues. Like a book is one avenue, working with you is another avenue. So
Right.
I'm just
Right.
curious to learn more about your process, how you're helping individuals with trauma, where it is consuming them, it is their identity.
Thank you for asking. It's a fairly new pathway. I had shared with you earlier, kind of a personal person. If you and I stopped in a hallway and you really wanted to know about my childhood or suicide or this or that, and we're by ourselves and I felt you were authentic, I would share. I can't do that anymore. I just feel like the universe is saying, you got to get out there. Come on, we need you. Let's go. Now, my book, I didn't feel I could write until all of my family members had passed. I thought about writing a book back in my late 20s to 30s and all that. A couple, my brothers were still alive and all that. And I was like, it's not the, and so everybody's been passed since 2018. My working title right now is Forever 51 Love Letters to My Bipolar Alcoholic Mother. The structure of it is she died at 51, so she's forever 51. But I'm writing literally in a letter form, Dear Mom. And the first letter is always written by Carol Ann from my childhood perspective with her. And then I write another letter to her as the adult, as that processing person to say, yeah, it sucked. But the top 5 things I like to do are habits or things you taught me. Sewing, dancing, cooking, and all these wonderful things. I had to, like I said earlier, detangle her from her bipolar alcoholism self to really who my mom was. I didn't see her very often, but when I did, lovely soul, very loving, all of that, and enjoyed it. It's written in that aspect, helping people to understand. Yes, sometimes we relive these traumas. They are exactly how we perceived them. However, let's get to some objectivity because perception is everything, but we have that choice. I can choose to still look at my mother as that bipolar, angry, alcoholic, verbally abusive woman, or I can say, wow, she had some really difficult scenarios going on. I truly believe her stress, as you were sharing, maxed out for her. And she didn't mean the thing she was saying. It was the alcohol speaking, her disease speaking, those kinds of things. And so I'm hoping, because the other trauma, but I think a good trauma, is I have a half brother that I didn't know. And my mother, when I was 15 years old, she was drunk and she chased me down the hallway and she's screaming and yelling as she always did. So I was trying to get away from her. And then I came into the bathroom and I'm looking at the medicine cabinet mirror and she's behind me. So I'm looking at her reflection. And I just said, Mom, you got to stop. She goes, well, you don't know what I've been through. I had a son and they took him from me. And you know where he is. I couldn't hear anything after that. I was like, what? I have a brother. What? So we all go to bed and whatever. A couple days later, I called my dad and I said, yeah, Dad, we need to talk. And I said what she had said, and there was silence on the other end of the phone. And I thought, oh God. And he goes, oh, she finally told you. I was like, what? It's true. And he goes, well, yeah, but Kara's before I met her and she put him out for adoption and all this stuff. And I was like, now leap ahead until 3 years ago. My nephew calls me and he says, hey, Carol, we chat. And he goes, well, we're on 23andMe And I think you're on Ancestry, but I just got this email from somebody. And in my head, I went, no. And he said, yeah, we linked, but he thought we were cousins or there was some blood link, right? So I said, okay, send me the picture, send me all this info. Long story short, I texted him 48 hours later and said, you found my nephew. You're related to him. You're not cousins. I said, I think I'm your half sister. Here's my number if you want to, call me back. And he did. And 4 months, 5 months later, I flew out there, met him. We talked all that. In fact, I just had a long talk with him 2 days ago. And that's the cause of my mother's bipolar alcoholism. He's going to write the last chapter, write a letter to her. We're doing edits and stuff like that. It's a personal healing because I'm going to go through those highlights of the childhood, but it's also to teach people perspectives, right? Your inner child was looking at her as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old scared individual, not understanding alcohol, not understanding bipolar. You just saw your mother as this person who wasn't available to you. And then putting that adult understanding on it to say, wow, I get why you as a bipolar became alcoholic because that is a trend sometimes of bipolar individuals. And then that is unfortunate. It's really helped me. I got actually re-traumatized writing a few chapters with things because it pulled some of the weeds out of the garden. But I would go to bed and finally wake up the next morning and say again, calm down. One, you're not there anymore. And two, it's not you. You're okay. You, Carol, and Carol Ann are okay. That was an experience. And let's get back to who we are. And we are, as I choose, we were talking about meditating earlier. I have a tattoo on my right foot that says, I am peace, love, joy, and grace. So who am I? That should have probably been my answer at the beginning because when I get even confused sometimes with things happen to us, that's where I pull myself back and disassociate from the event a bit, I detangle myself in that manner.
Yeah, this all really links back to what you said in the beginning, born several times. Each
Yes,
experience is a new rebirth, and sometimes
yes,
you're birthing a new trauma, releasing a trauma, so that you are literally
yes,
born several
yes,
times.
yes. And the other thing about being reborn is, yes, there's that physical kind of visual you can think of with childbirth, but you're a new human. Every time you experience something, you're a new person. And what does that mean? Unless you figure out and tease out what those lessons are for you, I mean, everybody that's gone through suicide, there's different perspectives and things that why that had shown up in their experience. And so I think part of it for me, I don't have all the answers yet, but part of it is to help. I'm not scared to talk. And at the walk, I ended up sharing a bit about my experience to the audience. We just had our monthly meeting 2 nights ago and we were all sharing again. I think when another human can see the same event in somebody, even though we experience a little different, it gives you validation. And I'm not crazy of some of the stuff spinning around in my head. But I also believe you have to get that spinner, the squirrel, out. And that's why I say the only way that you can heal is if you feel. You've got to feel the emotions attached to it. So be sad, be angry, be frustrated. Give yourself clock yourself and say, okay, 15 minutes, I'm going to scream to the top of my lungs. I'm going to punch my pillow. I'm going to throw dishes in the backyard. I'm going to take an axe and chop some wood to get this out. Be angry. I hated anger for the longest time. I thought it was the most worthless emotion. So I didn't like to experience it and feel it. And it wasn't until I was in college, my senior year, talking about journaling, I literally wrote Dear Anger as if to personify. And it took me until about page 11 at the top that I was mad that I didn't feel I was worthy of love. I said, you made me feel like I'm not worthy. And that was huge. I just sat on the bed staring at my pad. It's just interesting. But my one thing with any trauma is you can't avoid the feeling. The more we push them down, then they get stuck. Every emotion has energy, and that energy has impact on our organs. So, mind, body. Why do some people end up becoming alcoholics? Why do some end up with autoimmune disease? I mean, you mentioned psoriasis. My dad had psoriasis, and his was completely stress related, which the majority of psoriasis is. When he got away from my mother and moved out of the house, guess what got better for his immediate physical issues?
Right, but that's a really important point that repressed emotions cause so many issues. This is how
Yes,
Louise Hay got her start, was talking about
exactly.
those
I
emotions. If
love
you're feeling
yeah,
this, then there's an interconnection there. And we need to
absolutely.
release those repressed emotions. And you did that through your writing and
Right,
processes that you discovered and found that work for you that will help others as well.
right. And the other thing I'm trying to do now is be in public. I've had a few opportunities to speak about these topics. I'm talking with somebody from our big OB organization. We have an annual conference each year, as well as state conferences, and their suicide is running rampant, even in healthcare and health providers, which is scary, no matter where it happens, but it's a big deal.
Mm.
So we're talking about maybe I might be a keynote speaker talking about those kinds of issues.
Yeah, it's very important. Suicide rates continue to go up each year. It just
Yep.
keeps going and going and going because there's really not enough help out there to say, hey, let's stop the pharmaceuticals. Let's really dive into those
Yeah.
repressed
Let's
emotions. Let's
feel. Let's
feel, right,
feel. The,
right. That's why I
yeah.
was inquiring before when the doctor with the antidepressants, did he help you to process? Because there's a lot of doctors out there that don't do that. They'll just do medicine only.
Right. No, he did. It took him a while because I was very resistant again to speaking. And because all my other family members were alive, I felt like maybe I was the one spilling the secrets. I didn't want to get backlash. It was a personal thing for me, feeling like talking about it was somehow making some kind of accusation at them or towards them, which it wasn't. And he did help. I've been to many counselors over the years for different reasons or whatever, and they're like a pair of jeans. Some are better for me or not, may be good for you, may be not good for me, or you're not finding that bond with a certain person. Go find another. I totally agree. And I hate the term mental health. This is my other goal. I hate the term mental health because it's a stigma, right? Mental. Oh, you're mental. Brain health, brain disease. That's
Mhm.
the organ. We talk about heart disease. We talk about lung disease. Why not brain disease? I think the stigmas, I think, I had brothers, I've had two sons, I've been around, men in the workplace and things. And I feel horribly for that contingency in the sense that I think societal, it's just thrown on you guys. I remember my dad saying to my brother, "What are you crying over? Stop." Because he was being yelled at. He had misbehaved. So my dad's kind of disciplining, but he was really aggressive in his words. So my brother started to cry. Do you think he ever cried in front of people before? No. And he's one of those very emotional guys. That's what I loved about my brother, big teddy bear on the inside and everything. I do believe he talked to me probably more than anybody else. But I don't think after that whole time or childhood, I ever saw my brother cry. And it's not just about crying and sadness, it's any emotion. And emoting in a healthy, productive way is what I also say. Don't take it out on your loved one. Don't come home mad at your boss and start yelling at your wife or your husband or your kids or whatever. That's unhealthy release or unhealthy emoting. So that's my other goal is how do you flex your emotional muscle? How do you do it in a healthy way? Who teaches us how to do this? Our parents do, really, or our adults when we're children. You watch how your parents mad. You watch how your parents happy. You watch them and you're like, oh, okay. He yells at her, yelling really loud. All of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm supposed to yell really loud when I'm angry. My parents were not healthy at all. I always say people teach you who you want to be or who you don't want to be. When you finally realize what is not correct, what is not healthy, you want to strive and look for. And that's the other thing I've done in the last part of my life is find people that raise me up, that support me, that want to encourage me to keep going and do good things. I like that you asked me here. I felt like this was one of those moments.
Yeah, because your story is important. We want people to hear your story to get the word out that you're not
Yeah.
alone in this. And that's part of the
Yeah.
issue, I believe, is I'm alone. No one else is going through this.
Yes. That is the worst, I think, of any. I always say there's a cocktail to suicide. And part of that, a huge ingredient is antisocial behavior, not being social anymore, not connecting with friends and family. You start to get very closed off in your own personal world. And that is a huge flag. It's a huge flag for anybody, but certainly friends or family that you know already have been diagnosed with possible brain diseases that you reach back out. This day and age, most of us don't just drop by anybody's house, but this may be an occasion. If I had a dear friend that's not answering my phones or not reply, yes, I would try to answer the phone, but maybe I leave a couple flowers on the stairs or a little note to say, just thinking about you. Just want to make sure everything's okay. Antisocial behavior is huge. And like you and I were speaking earlier, it's the confusion when you get those bad thoughts in your head to detangle yourself from them. I'm not my thoughts. I'm having these horrible things in my head. It's that ability to stand back behind the words floating in front of your eyes to go, oh, we're not permanently attached. They're swirling in my head, but I can pull away from that. So it's trying to help people understand.
Right, because I've been in that state a few times and you can't separate yourself. That's the thing. You can't separate
Right.
your it's a completely tangled mess. So that's why I tell individuals that you want to learn some tools before the chaos of life hits.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Because we tend to regress, right? We finally kind of got over some behaviors or we're getting better. And then all of a sudden, kaboom, the world gives us this trauma, whatever it is. And then we go, wait, wait, wait. And you forget some of those newer tasks and tools that you've gained to pull yourself back on. Oh, okay, everybody's gonna be okay. Let's get through. So yeah, everybody needs tools in their toolkit.
That's why I recommend to everyone, even before you get sick, have some tools available because when you're in the midst of it, it's
Yes.
more difficult.
Yes. And like you say, what is good for you is different for somebody else. I always say what you may perceive as trauma, I don't, and what I do, you don't. So we're all individuals. Art therapy, pet therapy, cooking, writing, singing, going to talk to somebody. If you're not going to talk, I'm going to write. I'm going to journal. So it's finding, like you say, what are the tools I feel comfortable with now that when I do have something that's upsetting me, that I can help get through and detangle those emotions.
Right, because you don't want to repress those emotions. They're going to
Don't
cause more
repress
problems.
them. Gonna come out. Louise Hayes, God bless her. She was a very smart woman. I just remember staring at that book. Every page, I was like, and I was a nurse already by that point. And I was like, yes. Oh my gosh, that big step in heads. It was fascinating that she had no medical background, but was very intuitive of how she put certain things together. So,
Right. She was very mindful of the words that we speak.
and think of words as medicine, in a way. And we always say, how we talk to ourselves, how we talk to others. Anybody, any parenting guru will tell you your words. Yeah, actions matter. Absolutely. But words do too. And you can sit there and go, oh, I love you. Or, yeah, I love you. Or, I love you. You're so yummy. I just love you. That's three different I love yous. Maybe the one is okay for you. I'm a three. I'm the number three girl. I'm very empathetic, very emotional. I need the number three version, but not every time. But again, words matter. And I think even as an adult, it's to be very careful Like, even if you know you're about to go into a difficult discussion with somebody, you cannot take them back. Let's say you're in a relationship and you're finally going, well, we just need to get divorced then. Uh, you, you just took this to a whole nother. Is that serious? Are you really going to do that if we can't figure this out? Because you can't take that back. Or blowing up and saying ugly things, those kinds of things. It's hard. And people remember that. I've had my kids. I'm not the perfect parent either. I yelled out, and I've had my son like bring up an instance, and he's mentioned, God, mom, when you said X, that was so big to me. I didn't think it was. Doesn't matter. It's the person's perception. We all have different perceptions. And so if you felt I was too aggressive or you felt scared in the way I was emoting at you, you have every right to have your own personal emotion.
And now we're starting to understand more about the human body as well, the power of words. When you were speaking, it just reminded me of something I heard in childhood that it just brought back a memory. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That is
Um,
so wrong.
so wrong. What if you were on the playground and you and this one child are getting at each other and now there's a group forming and someone yells at you, oh, you're a bully. You're just a bully. I I don't know if it's true or not. And we all know there are people that fit that, let's say, personality. However, even if it's is or isn't true, it's still that's difficult. Even if I were a bully, you did call me out. Now I'm going to take that home with me, that suitcase with me to try to unpack that. Am I really? And we all know bullies are these ooey gooey, soft, melty, little teeny weeny people on the inside. They act nice and big, right? They want to puff up. That's the whole bully part, to be more than you are. Calling anybody anything, whatever titles or things that may be perceived as negative. It's a thing. You can remember that.
Mhm.
No. I always say things get tattooed on your brain.
Mm.
Like there's certain tattoos in my brain, they'll never come off. I can't come on. The night my mother died, her car accident, I can close my eyes. I can literally paint you the entire picture. And that happened when I was 18 in 1980.
Mhm.
So that's how long ago it happened. But I can also close my eyes and paint you the picture of when my first and second sons were born. I was laying in an operating room. Jake was breech, so I had a C-section, my first, and then Dylan was vaginal, and both of those days, very, very vivid. It, people say memories are snapshots or pictures, or yes, they're the visual, but you remember because it got locked or tattooed in your brain with the emotional attachment. That's why the ink is so dark, let's say, for some of our brain tattoos, a little bit darker than others. So yeah, they're with us.
That's a really good analogy. There's things that definitely imprint upon us, and if they're really
Yeah.
traumatic, that you're just constantly reliving that, then you people like yourself to help you scrub away those tattoos.
I know you can do that with laser nowadays, but I always say I also don't not want to remember in a way.
Won't take away the
Um,
power from it.
right. I learned so much. And the majority of it was how not to be. Okay, I'm comfortable being Carol Ann. I love her to death. I have this certain picture of myself by my two kids when they were young, and all three of them sit by my bedside. So I stare at Carol Ann every night before I go to bed. And I'm always like, "Girl, we made it. It's all good. Everything's fine." It reminds me life is precious. Like you're saying with kids, you teach either with a carrot or a stick. One child I will not name in public is always the stick, and one's more the carrot. Most of us would like to have carrots. But if you're honest with yourself, many of us are stick people. It takes our own what before we're like, okay, I'll stop or I'll start eating better. Fine. I have little palpitations. I got to get better with my cholesterol. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's really important advice there. So what was one last nugget you would leave with the audience today? One last nugget to take away?
One last nugget that you're not your experience. You experienced them. So being an an adult child of an alcoholic is a title. I don't wear that anymore. There are a couple comments of it in the book and those kinds of things, but I don't relate to that title. Yes, I'm a mother. So there's even titles that are positive. Yes, I'm a mother, but it also didn't define me. I've mothered many people in my life, not just my two sons. When we all do that, I mean, men can mother. So mother is more mothering. I feel I have that characteristic. So I'd like people to detach from the importance they find from either their experiences, titles, and just take a step back because we all, I believe, every baby that falls out in this world is completely, I always say, squeaky clean and happy and joyful and all of that. And life happens. Hopefully, we've got earth angels or other people that can help us through our traumatic because and that's the other thing, we're all going to have trauma. Can't get away from it. Whoever you believe in, things are going to happen. So try to get more comfortable with the authentic you. We're all here for a good reason. We deserve to be here. We deserve to be loved. And there's nothing that we can't overcome.
That's brilliant advice to take away. If people want to reach out to you, how would they do so?
So I've recently started, we do have a website and it's Carol Ann with no E. So CarolCarolAnn.com. When we first get the book up, it'll be over there. If there's any talks or even personal coaching, somebody's really going through something, they want it to be able to personal talk, we can do that. And I'll give my email, which is ccognp@gmail.com. So Carol Curran, the OBGYN nurse practitioner.com is another way people are finding me as well. I am happy to share any point in time with issues, always trying to help people out.
Well,
And
thank
I
you for your
appreciate this opportunity. Totally. Have
yeah,
enjoyed it.
thank you for joining our conversation. It was really enlightening. I think it's going to help a lot of people need a rebirth.
Yes, absolutely. It's kind of exciting. I like being a new person every so often, having that rebirth of newness. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.